Greetings and welcome. Welcome to Shema TV. My name is Mikael McDaniel and I'm your host. Shema is an ancient word of Hebrew origin with several different meanings and detailed connotations. But initially it means to hear. Not only to hear, but to listen. Not only to listen, but to intently listen, intelligently listen, contemplate. For a truth is about to be expounded, and once this truth is gleaned by the listener, he or she is to proclaim the same truth to others. This program seeks this lofty goal to render pure the original intent of the Scriptures and the applied understanding of the analogies set forth in the Scriptures. In my previous airings, I have repeated the analogies set forth by the Creator in the Scriptures, in which the original knowledge is supposed to be dispersed. Now, he analogizes his words partly in the plans of an edifice or the building of a building, and the plans that are laid out, and the building with all its structures and specifications in which to build, and without you can't. So I further this analogy in the book of Hosea, chapter 4 and verse 5. In this book is a scripture that's repeated by almost every congregation on the planet. It reads, "My people are destroyed for the lack of knowledge. Since you reject knowledge, I will also reject you. Seeing that you have forgotten the law of thy God, I will also forget your children." Now, the original intent is the people that are formed perish needlessly for the lack of knowledge. And because they reject knowledge is the reason why they perish. Because the original plans are designed to help us to live, to navigate this life. Seeing that you have rejected knowledge, I'll reject you. You'll no longer be able to speak for me. You'll no longer be able to understand what you read because you rejected it. You have a preconceived knowledge of what the scriptures say, so you just gloss over it. But this has happened so long that the people have forgotten how to extrapolate, how to study, how to read, how to be informed. Seeing that you have forgotten the law of thy God, in the original language, the Torah of thy Elohim. The Elohim is the original title. Some people, or in the anglicized rendering, is God. But the original title is Elohim, all-existent one. Seeing that you have forgotten the Torah, and Torah means instructions. The same instructions he uses in an analogy to build. Seeing that you have forgotten the Torah, which the original rendering is, the Torah, anglicized is called the law, but that's not really anglicized. It's just the Greeks and translators didn't have an equivalent for it. So it's that they use the word nomos. But it's Torah, and Torah means instructions. The verse reads, "Seeing that you have forgotten the instructions of thy Elohim, I will also forget your children, your posterity, your descendants." Because the instructions were given to be handed down, to be proliferated. The same instructions that it takes to build a building or a blueprint to build a building, these instructions help us to navigate this life. Without the instructions, we merely exist. Everyone has a lifespan. Everyone has a lifespan. But we can lengthen it or shorten it. In the book of Bereshit, or anglicized Genesis, the book of Genesis, the 18th chapter and 22nd verse, tells about the calling out of our father Abraham, known to the world as Abraham. Now, the Almighty speaks of Abraham, the calling out of Abraham, in this fashion. He says, I know him. I know him. That's the reason why I call him. I know him, but I know him to the end that he will teach his children and his household after him. After Abraham. What does this mean? After Abraham means after Abraham has perished. He will teach his household after him. This means that his knowledge will be proliferated, handed down. He was called the father of nations. And the nations will be blessed by his seed, who has the handed down knowledge. And the reason why he was called out in the first place. Yahweh. And people have different ways they want to call the personal name of the Almighty too, but his name is Yahweh. You say it with a breath. Yahweh, Waheh, which is called the Tetragrammaton. People have different pronunciations like Yahuwah, Yahweh, Yahovah. And I believe that the prophets had this problem too, so they just said Yah. It's a contracted form of his name. Yahweh called Abraham out of Ur of the Chaldees. This is an anglicized form of Ur Kasdim, which actually means calf-like bondage. He had to call him out of that place because he was bound. He was bound. He came out of that place by faith because he didn't know where he was going. He broke the bonds and he crossed over. He repositioned himself. He heard, he contemplated, and he made up his mind. He crossed over. This is where we get the word in the original Hebrew, Ivri or Ibri. Anglicized Hebrew. He became the first Hebrew. And this is how the nations are blessed by Abraham's seed, is because they share the proliferated knowledge that was delivered by the Almighty himself, who called Abraham out and became the father of nations. In the book of Davarim, or anglicized Deuteronomy, the 6th chapter in the 7th verse, it commands us to diligently teach our children. Diligently teach your children the proliferated knowledge, the handed down knowledge from the Almighty himself. And without this knowledge, they can't even build. They can't even build. In the book of Romans, chapter 10, verses 2 and 3, Rav Shaul, anglicized the Apostle Paul, Rav Shaul, he goes on to say, I bear record, or I give them credit, that they do have zeal. I bear record myself. I see their zeal. I bear record. They have a zeal for Elohim, or for God, anglicized, but not according to knowledge. Not according to knowledge. What knowledge? The same knowledge that was handed down to Abraham, that was handed down to his seed, that was handed down to Paul, who was a seed of Abraham too. But he's talking about the teachers and the leaders and the ministers. They have a zeal for the Almighty, but not according to the knowledge. Not according to the knowledge. They rejected the knowledge of the Almighty. They rejected his righteousness, and they established their own righteousness. They established their own righteousness. This is what led the Messiah to say, in vain do you worship me, teaching for doctrine the commandments of men, replacing the knowledge of the Almighty for the commandments of men. In the book of 1 John, it reads, chapter 5, verse 2, it says, by this we know that we know him, and know is the root word of knowledge. Know, knowledge, if we were to say it that way. But it appears like that, knowledge. But it's knowledge. By this we know that we know him, John says. That we keep his commandments. He or she who says, I know him, and keepeth not his commandments, is a liar. Is a liar. And the truth is not in him or her. Now, contemplating recent events, we see the direct evidence of the knowledge being forgotten, the Torah being forgotten, the words that were delivered to proliferate life, to help us to navigate this world, to preserve our seed, has been forgotten. Not until we receive a jolt or something catastrophic happens or drastic happens do we contemplate anything. We've turned unto him our back. We have cast his words behind our back. He's not forcing anybody to serve him. On the contrary, he said through Moses, he said, or Moshe, which is the original pronunciation of his name in the original language, anglicized Moses. He said, I hold out in my hand this day, life and death, blessing, curse. Reach out your hand and take whichever one you want. But out of love, he admonishes the people. Choose life. Choose life, that it may go well with you and for your seed forever. The Messiah said it best. He said, the words that I speak to you, they are spirit and life. We must return to him. We must return to him and to the original intent of the instructions that he gave us. Through Moses, through the men that are sent by him, by the prophet Yeshayahu. Yeshayahu said in 8:20, chapter 8, 20th verse, Yeshayahu, anglicized Isaiah, said, to the Torah and to the testimony, if they speak not according to this word, there's no light in them. Now, we read a Greek translation, so the scripture would read to the law and to the testimony. But the Torah was never called the law. The Greek translators had no equivalent for instruction. So they added the translated word nomos, which means law. Astro, for example, astro means star. Nomos means law. That's where we get astronomy from, the law of the stars. But the Torah means instructions. Instructions. To the Torah and to the testimony. The same instructions that were given to Abraham before they were even committed to writing. Abraham observed the decrees, the ordinances, and the commands before they were even committed to writing. Handed down from Moses to his children, then from father to son. But we have forgotten his Torah, his instructions. We haven't veered off the path. We haven't stepped off the path. We have left the path. In doing so, we forsake our own protection. We forsake our own protection. We shorten our own lifespan. And when you don't stand for the Torah, for the original instructions, you'll fall for anything. Expect anything to happen to you. You are in limbo, We think we live, but we just exist. We just exist. And in the kingdom age, we'll have nothing to look forward to. Because when the skies roll back like a scroll and we see him come, if we're not on board, then we'll suffer the fate of a sinner, of a lawless one. This is what our freedom is about. When the Messiah said, take my yoke upon you and learn of me. Take what yoke? The yoke of the Torah, the yoke of the instructions, the yoke of heaven, and learn of me. My yoke is easy, my burden is light. It's not as complicated as you think it might be. As you think it might be. It's not that hard to do. It's not in heaven that you have to send someone up there to get it for you. Not in the deepest part of the sea. It says very near you, right in your mouth to do it. At the end of the age, the multitudes are going to say to him, did we not do many wondrous works in your name? Did we not cast out devils in your name? He's going to say, depart from me, you workers of iniquity. In some translations it says, you lawless ones. What it actually means is, you without the Torah, without the original instructions that I've given you, that you may proliferate, that you may navigate, and that you might live forever. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope you will always tune in to be enlightened, and that together we would share and arrive at the proper meaning and the proper understanding of the scriptures. I like the analogy of a train, a passenger train. And we're waiting for the train, but we decide to go inside for whatever reason. We decide to get a cup of coffee or talk with some friends or just read a newspaper. And the train passes us. The train is not going to back up. If you're not on the train will leave you. It's going to go on with or without us. Thank you for tuning in. And I hope to see you again. Till next time, this is Mikael McDaniel saying, Shema, hear and listen. Shalom.